now private equity is almost needed for some of these teams to continue with the leadership that they have, because the valuation is getting so high and there's such a big cost. And at what level will you draw a line with private equity in the National Football League? I just think that's the next. It's really nerdy. It doesn't. Would we rather talk about C.J. Stroud going to have a sophomore jinx, or is he going to have a great year too? Because Houston built around him. I love talking about all that stuff, but the foundation, the house that everybody plays in, how that evolves and changes, to me is always interesting to watch, and I'm fascinated to see where that plays out for the league over the next six or 9 months. Agreed.
And first of all, I am a nerd, and also it's okay to be a nerd. So kids, if you're listening and people call you a nerd, just own it. It's okay to be a nerd. Look, when I started in the league and I walked into my first league owners meetings in the early 80s or the mid 80s, it was Lamar Hunt, Ralph Wilson, Dan Rooney, Wellington Mara. And you're absolutely right, of course, Mike, that, these teams have now been passed to the next generation. But private equity is something to keep our eyes on. We all know it's a story in the league right now. What a lot of people don't realize is that allowing private equity or institutional ownership, if you will, has been a discussion in those league meetings for decades. We were discussing that when I was still in the league. Nothing came to pass. I believe something will come to pass now.
But why now, guys? And I ask this of both of you.
Increased value.
I mean, is it just because of the money and how much things cost? But is that really the only reason why they're allowing it now, is just the sheer value?
I'll let you take that, Mike, and then I'll add on to what you have to say.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Suzy. I think it has to be, because the valuations of these teams are getting so large and so big that to do these projects, we have teams that are less likely to get a city to sign off on all the improvements for a stadium, or the valuation, or the amount of money that's just being transacted with all the money coming in and coming out, that private equity is a part way to help get other people under the tent of ownership. And many of these teams have minority owners that we don't really hear from or talk about.
Yep.
But a lot of them are around the league. And just to have this great resource of resources in the private equity space involved, I think it's something that's almost inevitable at this point, Amy.
Well, look, as the value of teams continues to increase, and that value is just extremely high right now, the number of potential buyers who can do it, non-institutional buyers, get smaller and smaller and smaller. And look, when you are selling something, you want the demand to purchase it to be great. Let's use a supply and demand analogy. Suzy, you're selling your house. You want more prospective buyers than you have houses, and you want them in a bidding war. So I'm conflating a lot of different issues here, and I'm not doing it particularly well. But the fact is, as values continue to increase, there are going to be fewer and fewer people who can simply write the proverbial check, because look, there are limitations on how much debt can be placed on a team, how much debt can be placed on an ownership interest, how much it's been a discussion for decades.
Mike, you want to jump in?
Well, just look at Washington, the last team to sell, right? And putting that together, it was a big haul to get the right group and the right amount of investors, and who really had the money to do it, as Josh Harris ended up being the lead there. So when those situations come up and teams sell every few years, Amy nailed it. You just don't have the individuals who have the bandwidth to be good for that amount of debt in a transaction, and you're going to need some help here supplementally along the way.
Check out new episodes of What the Football with Suzy Shuster and Amy Trask every Tuesday. Watch us on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page, or follow and listen wherever you get your podcasts.